What's happening? Welcome here to Lacrosse Now. He is Tom Eschen. I'm Travis Eldridge. We've got Olivia Dirks joining this show, now member of Team USA, now UNC Tar Heel, transfer from Penn State this year. We'll talk to her. Plus, we got plenty of topics to get to here throughout the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk some recruiting with Joey Spallina, still the big talk of the town.
Yep.
We're talking about Charlotte North as well, the impact she has made, you know, almost in the lacrosse world. And we'll get into some NLL. Let's start there because the season is upon us.
We made it.
We're in the midst of training camp for a lot of these players and teams for the first time in, 20 months it is?
Yeah.
And like it's been so long, we're like, we need to just figure out what's going on here again, right? In the season, how did we leave? How are we going to start back up?
So let's start. It's been 20 months, like you said, 600 days since the last time we saw the NLL on the floor. So throughout this time, let's start with this, Tom.
Okay.
Which team did the layoff for the pandemic hurt the most?
All right, so I don't know if this one is a surprise or not. I'll go with the Calgary Roughnecks, who are the still defending champions, mind you. They were, 5-5 when everything shut down, but I think I remember even talking about it in February. I'm like, this team, they haven't gotten everything together just yet. They were trying to maybe figure it out and capture what they had. Of course, they had Dane Dobie, the MVP, Curtis Dixon. It just looks a lot different in Calgary than it did when the pandemic hit in 2020. No more Reese Dutch, no more Dane Dobie. They're both off to San Diego. So already you lose the MVP. They changed their color scheme.
They did. I almost forgot about that.
They lost Tyson Bell, too. And then you bring back Zach Currier. Shane Simpson was really good. Eli Salama all re-signed. But you're just not the same feel. Dixon's back, too. But you're just not what you had, I don't think, before, where maybe you were thinking maybe they could go on a little bit of a run here. That sort of isn't the case. And San Diego's looking a lot stronger out there in the West, too.
Yeah, that's true. It's amazing how much these teams have changed since the last time we saw them play, because we've had expansion drafts, we've had a number of different entry-level drafts. These teams have changed pretty drastically. For me, though, the team that I think this hurt the most was the Halifax Thunderbirds. They were in the middle of their first season, and they were really good.
There was a buzz, right?
Yeah,
you know?
and for Halifax, too, and knowing people in that organization moving up from Rochester, and actually, interestingly enough, there were a number of people in the front office that had moved with Kurt Stiers in the organization up to Halifax to at least have a part in launching this team in a new location. And they were on fire. They were in first place in their division.
They started out, 6-7, 6-8, 6-0, 7-0?
Yeah, they were terrific. They were 8-4 when the season shut down there in March of 2020. And you mentioned the buzz. Like, it felt like the fans there, they were creating some great media on social media. They were really developing something. And all of a sudden, it just gets shut down. So you have a team that probably could compete for a championship. They're looking at a likely postseason berth.
Yeah.
So all that goes into that in terms of building a fan base in a new location, and that's wiped off. And then you don't play a whole nother year. So now you're almost starting from scratch here in this new season. So that hurts. And the other thing to think about is Cody Jamieson was playing really well back in 2019, 2020. In his older years, we had seen him deal with injuries over the last several seasons in Rochester and go in and out of the lineup. And so by missing this past year and missing the end of 2020, that's just a whole nother year for an aging veteran star that he just doesn't get to be on the floor. And I think that goes across the board for a number of these guys. And you know they're going to come back hungry. But you're missing a year when, like, sometimes those years start to add up. You don't get them back. Like, it's just gone.
Well, and you ride the momentum and the wave of they did such a great job of building it up. You know, their debut in Halifax, you know, sort of just changing the feel of that franchise, which obviously it was so successful in Rochester. Then you move to Halifax and you sort of get this whole new feeling. And that's a nice wave to ride into the season, you know, with the philosophies they took and going in. And, because then now the wave's gone. And now you got to sort of regain that momentum, but do it on your own without all of that behind it, too.
Like, look at Kyle Jackson. The guy, like, got married, had a baby, bought a house, and, like, all in the time since we last saw him on the floor.
Right, yeah. A lot of his life has changed forever. But he's still really good at lacrosse.
He's still good.
And he's still got a lot of talent.
He's in the prime of his career.
Yes,
so last year, a little less important for him as it is for Cody Jameson.
Travis wanted to start with that. And I'm like, well, let's talk about the team that's helped the most. You know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So who did the pandemic help the most? I'll deter to you here.
I mean,
yield to you?
Probably the team that was probably most pumped about the season getting shut down in 2020 was New York Riptide. They had one win in their inaugural season. It was tough sledding. They're trying to fill that arena on Long Island, trying to create buzz. As much success as Halifax had, it was tough. I mean, you're in the New York market. You're trying to start from scratch again.
Well, and they're starting from scratch again.
And right? And you're starting from scratch again. You've got a team that was just a bunch of different pieces, and there's some American guys you're trying out because you want to create buzz, but then you also have to balance it with trying to put a competitive team on the floor. So they had a lot going into that first year, and obviously didn't have success immediately. Get rid of their coach, bring in a new head coach, a new GM. When you were looking at it, they were going into that draft not knowing, they had the #1 overall pick, that first draft in 2020, not knowing, are we going to have a 2020-2021 season? But the question was really not a question. Do you take Jeff Teat? And the question is always yes, #1. But the thought was, all right, well, he's going to have to sit out a year. Well, not only did they get Jeff Teat,
it's true,
but they didn't miss him for a year.
Right.
Obviously, Cornell didn't have a season, so he didn't play, but he immediately is available. The next year you're going to play. Plus, they went and added Callum Crawford in free agency leading into what was supposed to be the 2020-2021 season. So you are 2 superstars up, and you scrapped what was going to be just an atrocious season. I can't get better than that.
No, I think they've completely done a 180 in the offseason since they started.
They went from a team who was struggling to win more than 1 game.
Which is how they were built.
Right.
They were, as their philosophy as an expansion was to start young and figure out where they're going to be after that, but still.
To a team now that can compete for a playoff berth in year 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Technically, their second year in existence.
Which will be great to try to get fans in the building and all that and get some interest around instead of having to, bring in guys, whatever, for whatever reason. And now they've got a real guy that trot out there in Jeff Teat, which they've done a great job of marketing, promoting, and as they should.
Rocking the backwards hat with assembly members.
I don't think he's taken off the hat since he started there.
It keeps the hair in place.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to
go. Who's your team?
I'm going to go with the Vancouver Warriors. And my reason is because they didn't have a first-round pick from the year 2014 through 2019. So as far as you can remove yourself from that era, the better off you're going to be.
You understand what I mean? Man.
You know what I mean?
They made a lot of trades.
So you don't have anything in the fire coming through like those. They knew maybe these last couple of years were going to be lost years. Well, guess what? Everybody lost these last couple of years. So you get a couple of those first-round picks, Reed Bowering in 2020, now Adam Charlambides in 2021, and then they actually brought in Alex Bouquet to play goal, Matthew Dinsdale from Saskatchewan, and everything has changed a bit for Vancouver because things, when that ended, they're like, it's been a while. We got our Reed Bowering, they ended up getting Reed Bowering after that season, but they hadn't had a first-round pick, another lost season, but now they sort of been like, okay, we have sort of recovered from that era, and we've been able to just figure things out after that. So they still have Mitch Jones, Logan Schuss, guys that have been cornerstones of that franchise, but now they can sort of move on from not having really any first or second, round talent that it was been such a long time.
Well, and Reed Bowering was another one of those guys like Jeff Teat. He went back to college for that final season, so he wasn't going to play in the NLL there for 2020, 2021. So once again, another one of those draft picks that...
And a franchise changer, right?
Yeah.
He's a guy that changes the look of your field.
He's a backdoor guy who, from everything... in talking to people around the indoor game, is a game-changing type guy out of the back door. And obviously, we saw his offensive talent in college at Drexel as well. So he can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just got a little bit of a taste there of how these teams look.
That's true.
Just for that sake.
All right, let's move on to topic 2. And speaking of college lacrosse, obviously the early signing period has come here for college lacrosse. The first time that current high school seniors can officially sign that letter of intent to officially commit to the school that they have chosen, going from verbal to official, and no bigger signing than that of Joey Spallina, the #1 overall recruit in this current high school senior class, obviously picking Syracuse. He had verbally committed, stayed there even amidst the coaching change from John Desko to Gary Gate. Now he signs his letter of intent. The question is, how big is the signing of Joey Spallina going and picking Syracuse for this Orange program moving forward?
Well, I guess I think about this on the grand scheme of things and looking at what the program will look like when he arrives, because it's going to be another year before that happens. And you have to also look at what just happened in this offseason when you bring in Gary Gait and Dave Petramala. And I think maybe Joey Spallina could be an outstanding player and one of the best that Syracuse has ever seen. I think that's certainly the potential for that to happen. But at the same time, I look at Gary Gait, and I just think his impact looms so large in that program. Yeah, you could bring in Joey Spallina, but maybe you could brought in anybody else, too, and they would make a pretty big impact. I would love to see just what Gary Gait can do in year 1, mind you, nonetheless year 2, 3, 4 down the line. So I think Joey Spallina, yes, he is going to make a big difference in the future of Syracuse, but I think in the intermediary time before Spallina gets here, Gary Gait just might be the one to bring him to the promised land before Joey Spallina even arrives.
That's true. And this year, for sure, the story around Syracuse lacrosse is going to be Gary Gait. They have some terrific players, but the story is the guy that is now in charge of one of the most prestigious programs in the country. However, when was the last time an individual player for Syracuse had the buzz that Joey Spallina has before he's even close to stepping on campus?
I mean, Chase Scanlon had a little of that.
A little buzz.
Wearing the 22.
Yeah,
and all that,
a little bit.
I
but
mean,
like,
there was some buzz there.
But like, this team was the #1 team in the country when the season shut down in 2020. Coming back in 2021, they were, considered maybe a top 5 team.
Yeah.
And there wasn't the same buzz, and they were all coming back. And it's because there's nothing bad to say about the guys who have worn the orange uniform over these last handful of years. But there's a reason there hasn't been that buzz. They haven't had a Brennan O'Neill. They haven't had a...
Stop right there, because the Brennan O'Neill thing is what I was thinking about. Of who do you think has had more buzz, Brennan O'Neill or Joey Spallina?
I think
you look at
I think it's a toss-up.
Right? As Brennan O'Neill, do you think he's going to change Duke forever?
No, but Duke is also a program that has had success in recent years and been to Final Fours and won national championships since Syracuse's last time.
So because of that, even if O'Neill is generational, as he's been touted out to be, he won't make that big of a difference because the bar was already high. Like, you think Spallina's bar is here with Syracuse and will make more of that down the road.
And here's the difference. As great of a program as Duke is, they don't have the history of Syracuse. Like, Duke is an incredible lacrosse program, one of the best.
They're starting to make one.
They are, but they don't have the Gary Gait legacy.
No,
they don't have the Powell legacy.
Yeah.
So when you go to a program like that, it's like, I'm trying to think of the basketball example. It's like going to UCLA and having all this prestige. Actually, UCLA is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's like UCLA making the run that they finally did this past year, and all of a sudden you've got a fan base that is remembering the days of John Wooden. Like, that's Syracuse lacrosse. While the recent history has not been great, it's been good but not great. But it's not up to the standards of what a Syracuse lacrosse fan expects this program to be. You bring in Joey Spallina, and all of a sudden you've got a fan base that goes, oh, not only are we a team that should compete to get in the postseason and win an ACC title, but we might also have a guy that could possibly win the Tewaaraton Award. I mean, Syracuse has had some finalists in somewhat recent memory for the Tewaaraton Award on the men's side, but I can't remember the last guy.
As an individual, I think
I can't remember the last guy that actually thought was going to win it.
Right.
I mean, you probably have to go back to the championship teams in 08 and 09.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Like Kevin Rice had a tremendous career and was a finalist there, but like, I mean, he wasn't a guy that was walking into that award thinking he's taking it home.
No, and there's been glimmers of it, over the past decade, but no one's been able to really establish themselves as one of the best in the nation. And I think that's a big shoe. Those are big shoe. Like, that's a lot of pressure on Joey Spallina. So we don't want to put that on him and to walk in and expect him to be that guy. But as a recruit coming out, I'm really curious to see exactly. I think it's a great combination with him and Gary Gait in terms of developing him from day one.
Well, and remember, the last guy that was given the honor that he's being given was Jordan Evans. And unfortunately for Jordan Evans, that was just too big of a pressure and burden to put it. Jordan Evans became a nice player at Syracuse and was a role player for that team, but he wasn't the number 22 starter for 4 years.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting when I talked to Joey Spallina, and I asked him about the conversation about 22, and it was in the first conversation he had with John Desko. That is the type of game-changing talent that Desko and the recruiters thought of Joey Spallina. So now the question is, does he come through? But in terms of that, like if he's anything close to what like people think he could be, game-changing for the outlook of this program.
Is there maybe, though, a guy already on campus that can maybe serve as an overshadow to him in terms of like an Owen Hiltz, if you will, who was really, really good as a freshman? Looks like he was maybe overshadowed by Brennan O'Neill a bit, but probably shouldn't have been, because
he's great.
He is a man among boys and a guy that maybe can take that mantle in the meantime. And Joey Spallina maybe will have that legacy towards the end of his career after Hiltz gets out of the way. I'm just sort of playing, hypotheticals here, but you think of someone who's on campus now that's going to be on that team alongside of maybe not letting the star shine as brightly, which for Syracuse is a great problem to have.
Well, you go back through the history of some of these guys, even if they've come in and weren't 22. Like Casey Powell had guys ahead of him that helped him win a national championship when he was a freshman. Ryan Powell comes in, and his brother's wearing 22 when he's a freshman. That's a perfect thing. And Brennan O'Neill's the perfect example. He didn't have to be the guy right away for Duke because they had talent all around him. Obviously, Michael Sowers helped because everybody's focusing the attention on the guy who should have won the Torton Award, and he's now your teammate. But it's going to be a huge help if you got a guy like Owen Hiltz who all of a sudden is in a Torton conversation when Joey Spallina is a freshman, because it takes a little bit of the shine off. Not that it's going to be tough to take the shine off when he's rolling out freshman year wearing 22. But if there are a bunch of other really good pieces around him that make him feel comfortable and he doesn't have to do it all right away on the field, that's a really important piece.
Right, and I think that's a bit of what we saw with Joey Epstein with Hopkins, because Hopkins was a little bit on.
He's asked to do a lot.
He was asked to do a lot from the start, and he probably, in a lot of people's minds, including Dave Petromalis, delivered on that for the people in that room, in that program. But outside of that, he came in with, stamps of approval from Paul Rabel and all these other, like he's the hardest worker ever. It was a lot to live up to, and I don't know if that's something you could ever live up to. So maybe you're right when it comes to Joey Spallina. He's coming in with a similar amount of publicity, for a program like Syracuse and Johns Hopkins, where he's got a lot to live up to, but hopefully has enough around him where he doesn't have to maybe figure it out later in his career. I think Epstein has done a pretty good job of that, of developing, but, a lot of people expect it now, day one for on campus.
Brennan O'Neill and Joey Epstein also come from a very similar spot in terms of the lacrosse they've played against the talent they've played against. I think the O'Neill transition should make Syracuse feel pretty good about the Spallina transition to that next level.
O'Neill and Spallina
having success. Yeah, they're both
O'Neill and Spallina. You said Epstein.
Sorry. O'Neill. Yeah, same club program.
O'Neill and
Long
Spallina,
Island. I think that transition should be easy for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. It hopefully will be, and you hope for the best for the kid.
Yeah,
it's a lot of pressure to live up to. But that family. I mean, you all know Joe Spallina. I mean, they have a very high standards.
They welcome pressure.
You're right, and they sort of live off of that, and that mentality does go a long way.
100%.
All right, let's move on once again. Speaking of generational talents,
got another one.
Let's talk about Charlotte North because I got a chance, to be able to see her compete with Team USA really for one of the first real times in front of all of us, and in this kind of a atmosphere. Not outside of college, outside of the confines of Boston College and Chestnut Hill and all that, and it was a sight to behold, because you see that within the framework of the college game where a little bit less freedom and teams are obviously game planning for you. But this was that when she competed with Team USA, at the Fall Classic, you saw somebody that was completely a step above, it feels like, the rest. And you're talking about the best players in the world. And I know, there was some good and bad, whatever you have you, but you look at her just as an individual athlete and someone with hunger and desire to be out there. It's like, the sky's the limit. I guess, where is the sky for her? The impact she has made and will make on the sport of lacrosse as time goes on. That opened my eyes big time.
It's been the year of Charlotte North, and I think it's so fascinating the way that it's all kind of played out for her, because I remember talking to her at Duke when she had a couple of stellar seasons there in her first 2 years in college, and then she decides to transfer to BC. And I remember thinking, all right, she's a really good player, but she was doing it on a team that was kind of in the middle to the bottom part of the ACC, a fringe NCAA tournament team, and she was standing out amongst good players. And then she gets to BC, And her first of all, we didn't even know she was going to play that first year in 2019-2020. Had to get a waiver approved by the NCAA in order to transfer and play the next year in conference in the ACC. Gets approved. But people forget, like, that Boston College team, Charlotte North had a pretty good amount of hype in that first year at BC. They lost 3 of their first 7 games. They lost to UMass.
Yeah,
they lost
start.
to USC. They struggled. They were trying to figure stuff out. So the pandemic hits, it stops that year. And then, like, it was like, despite the fact that they couldn't be together, that year really helped BC because they, I believe, got some more transfers in the meantime. And they gelled together for that run that we saw that put Charlotte North on the map for good and winning a Towards Han Award and winning a national championship. But I think it's fascinating when you look back at that 2019-2020 season where Charlotte North was good, but nobody was talking about her as the best player in the country.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she came back and, like, midway through this past year where they went on to win the title, it clicked for her, and it was over.
I like that you bring up the COVID year because I believe Acacia Walker has said this before, and I think Charlotte North has too. They actually really appreciated that little stretch of time they got because they feel like they got a lot out of it. And they probably knew they weren't ready yet.
They weren't the national champions
yet. In terms of getting together and just playing together in almost this format, which there was no end, because we all know that now. But at the same time, they got to go play games and compete with each other and figure each other out of this world, mind you, as well, without Kenzie Kent, Sam Apuzzo, and Dempsey Arsenault. So that was their trial almost to say, all right, we've got this period of time. Let's figure it out and then look at the next year, which is exactly what they did. And there wasn't a championship to compete in 2020, so 2021 was their next opportunity. 2
other things that have made this the year of Charlotte North, in my estimation, that have all worked in her favor. 1, the COVID year got her an extra year. She wasn't supposed to come back here this next season. Well, she's capitalizing, because this was the perfect year for her to come back because you have the new name, image, and likeness stuff. And if there's any player in college lacrosse, period, men's or women's, that can capitalize on that, it's Charlotte North. She's already got merch deals. She's got camps throughout the Thanksgiving break and coming up over the holidays back in her home state of Texas, which is huge and is a huge positive for her in terms of being able to grow her popularity and brand. And the second thing that works perfectly in her favor with Team USA is that Jenny Levy has taken over as the leader of the U.S. women's national team. And nobody that has had that job previously has embraced the need to sell this sport more than Jenny Levy.
Yeah.
She wants excitement. She wants star power. She wants awesome viral goals. She wants all that. And Charlotte North plays right into it.
And she wants to sell out Towson this summer.
Yes.
That is Jenny Levy's
goal.
They want to have standing room only. They want to make those world championships as big as possible.
An event, a spectacle.
Right. And that's an opportunity for Charlotte North to get on the main stage. And then I'm looking beyond that to the Olympics in 2028. I mean, that's 7 years down the road. If lacrosse is there, I guess, to me, because I'm thinking about the ceiling for Charlotte North and where she can get as an athlete in the world of sports as we know it. And I wonder can she be one of those Olympians that as a fan of, like, Team USA? You think of these sports that are more niche sports, swimming, gymnastics, that you don't see all the time, but you know some names, right? You know the Katie Ledeckis of the world. You know Simone Biles through these cycles of the Olympics. Is Charlotte North maybe one of those that belong in that conversation eventually, where the Olympics get her to that tier of life in the sport, in the world of sports?
I think my biggest question is she's got another year at BC to be able to embrace everything she has in college and use that platform. I think my biggest question for her will be, how do you stand out in a space post-college that we've seen Kayla Trainer, Taylor Cummings, Kylie Ohlmiller all have this same kind of buzz, but maybe not to the extent of Charlotte North? How does she stand out? I mean, we've seen Kylie Ohlmiller have great success post-college in terms of building her brand.
Yep.
Marie McCool, another one.
Taylor Cummings. Everything she's got going on.
How does she stand out and become somebody more than just that?
Which is, know.
And can she? I don't know.
Is that her personality? Because a lot of that breeds into the kind of personality you can have outside of the actual sport you play at the same time.
And does she want it? And I don't know. But that's the next question as she looks ahead to building her brand, now having a real opportunity to build her brand in her final year at college, and then looking afterward.
Yeah. I think it's going to be fun to watch for sure. So enjoy it. I mean, that's what you have to take away is just enjoy watching an athlete of her competitiveness, her skill level play, because you don't know how much longer it's going to last.
Has a chance to do it in her home state of Texas this weekend here for USA Lacrosse. So finally, our final topic here before we get to Olivia Dirks for our interview is the effects of the transfer portal. Because throughout college lacrosse, obviously the transfer portal being put into effect here over the last several years has created a bit of an impact. How big of an impact has it played?
Yeah, you mentioned Olivia Dirks, of course, transferring from Penn State to North Carolina, where she'll probably finish out her college career, and another one of those All-Americans going to North Carolina. And I guess you wonder because, of course, there's so much made about the biggest names sometimes in lacrosse that go, right? That move on. Of course, this season it's Jonathan Donville from Cornell to Maryland, and you think about the impact that he could make there. And with Wisnauskas wearing #1, being a transfer in his own right, Keegan Kahn, another guy, Alex Trippi, who went to North Carolina to Georgetown as well. I think you wonder, and then you look at the past, how much of an impact it actually makes. At the end of the day, when it comes down to winning games, is it really something that moves the needle as much as everybody sort of makes it out to be, is my question.
I would argue that the COVID year is going to have a bigger impact here over the next 4 years than the transfer portal in general.
Yeah.
I think the ability to play 4 years at a school now for anybody who is in school during that 2019-2020 season, the ability to play 4 years at a school and then decide, well, that school doesn't have the program I want to go to business school, so I'm going to go to Duke, like Michael Sowers did. Or for Jonathan Donville, I can't go back to Cornell because I already completed my degree there, so I'm going to go play at Maryland for another year. I think the COVID year will ultimately have a longer lasting impact on the national champions we see here over the next couple of seasons than the transfer portal does for moving forward.
I mean, the ability for them to transfer,
they sort
of play into each other.
They can, but I just think that having another year of eligibility.
Even like a Michael Sowers or a T.D. Erlin, they couldn't play in the Ivy League. They move on. They're great players.
Had a great impact.
Are they that much bigger of an impact for the Dukes and the Denvers of the world where it's changing the landscape of lacrosse?
I would argue that even before the transfer portals, transfers were happening.
Yeah,
you remember, like, the transfer portal, I think, has become more of just an easier way for guys to go, but it's not like guys weren't going before. Like, Logan Wisnauskas transferred before the transfer portal.
Right.
He left Syracuse after his freshman year, after he was redshirted, went to Maryland because he didn't play, and all of a sudden he was this stellar player that if you talk to people who were around that Syracuse program that year, they were like, yeah, these guys love Logan Wisnauskas, but he's redshirted, so like he left, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, he ended up being a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
It was happening before because in lacrosse, outside of transferring within some different conferences, there's nothing stopping you from leaving one team and then playing the next year for another. So you could argue that in lacrosse, especially, transfer portal really hasn't had that big of an impact because guys were doing this anyway.
Yeah, and on the women's side as well, like North Carolina, you see what they do. I mean, Jenny Levy gets, as the Team USA coach, like this is an example. Olivia Dirks been with the Team USA for some cycles and likes what Jenny Levy, it's a tribute to the way she works.
Yeah.
I think that makes it interesting, some of those connections and where they lie. But like you said, I think, it has been a part of the sport for a lot longer than I think the transfer portal, in terms of the verbiage. I just don't know if it's one team's titles, is what I'm wondering. Has the transfer portal you could, maybe Boston College, you could say the transferring in essence won them the title, but I don't know how often or how groundbreaking it is regardless.
I do think that we passed the time of the super team that we got that first COVID year when you looked at Duke on the men's side and UNC on the women's. I think that was a special season, and we figured out that both those teams were really, really good and just ended up at the end of the day, somebody can beat you.
Well, teams with more continuity can beat you.
Well,
it took a little while for Duke to get used to Sours this year.
Yes, I agree.
And North Carolina started out really well on the women's side, but also there were some growing pains there.
But there's also a reason you play the game. Like sometimes on a given day, there's somebody who has a couple of players that end up playing really well. We saw it with BC against UNC. Like you could argue on any given day, as we saw throughout the regular season between those two, that like some days UNC was the better team, other days BC was. Yeah. That day in the semifinals, BC was the better team.
And they had more than Charlotte North contributing for them that day too.
Yeah. You know? Like it just, it is what it is.
Yeah. I think it's interesting the way things change as time goes on.
Sure.
Just to get really deep on you all. Take a look around, and see what's going on in the world around you. All right, so a big weekend for the U.S. lacrosse. The women are in Dallas, Texas, getting ready to compete, and now we have one of the people that are playing this weekend with Team USA once again, Olivia Dirks, the newly minted North Carolina Tar Heel. Hello, Olivia. You're down in Dallas. You excited for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm super excited. Just another great chance to get back out there with some of the best players in the world.
Yeah, you've been through you've been through a couple of the training sessions and weekends here so far. What's this experience been like for you with Team USA?
It's just such an honor to be able to represent the red, white, and blue whenever you get the chance, and just to learn from some of the, like I said, best players in the world and people that really inspired me and I looked up to from such a young age. To be able to play right alongside them is something I've always dreamed of. So such a great experience.
That, to me, is always one of the coolest things about these weekends is like seeing some of the younger players who are still in college like yourself have the opportunity to play with some of the veteran players. Like, what was your pinch me moment throughout any of these weekends? Like, oh my gosh, I get to play with them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had a ton of those just because I've been watching these girls when they played in college, and then I think it was one of our first scrimmages. I went to go take the draw, and Taylor Cummings was standing there. And I was like freaking out, obviously. And she was like, "Hey, how are you? Like, are you nervous?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like, you're my role model." So that was kind of a little pinch me moment, but yeah.
That's really neat. Do they give you, any like nuggets of advice sort of along the way, like maybe when you start or get there, or even things that are like procedural, that they sort of pass along?
Yeah, I think they're just all really supportive, which obviously helps, and they kind of cheer you along as you go and act like you're just like the same age as them, which really helps. And I've heard like my coach, it's kind of funny because I play with Emily Peros, who's also such an amazing player, and she's also my coach. So that's a really cool experience too. And she kind of helps me along the way, and she's like, "You got this. Keep working hard," and stuff like that, which is
You're like, awesome. I just passed you the ball. Like, you cheer me on. You got to go score. Come on.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned Taylor Cummings is like one of your role models coming up. Did you go to any of these players like camps or clinics like in middle school and high school?
I think I actually might have gone to, it might have been Taylor Cummings. Yeah. Or Marie McCool, I think, might have done something that I went to. So, yeah, that's funny.
So now you're on the same team, just how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, it's great to keep learning from them and watching them because every time I see them play, I'm like, wow, they just do the most, like, creative and skilled things I've ever seen. So.
Yeah, obviously you have the familiarity a little bit more now with Jenny Levy. I guess, is there, a difference between her as the Team USA coach and her as the North Carolina coach, or is it just she's just Jenny? Because I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this too, right?
Yeah, she's always just Jenny, and I mean, yeah, I love her as a coach. She's a great person, and she's so supportive and really just pushes you, I think, to be the best version of yourself, whether it's here at US or at UNC. She's always the same Jenny, always supportive, and just a great coach all around. So I'm so happy I can be coached by her, but she kind of keeps both things a little separate, and yeah, she tries to just focus on what she's doing in the moment, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned the transfer. You go from being a terrific player at Penn State, which was obviously a little closer to home coming from outside Philadelphia, and now you join North Carolina. Just walk people through what went into that decision to go a little bit further away but join a tremendous Tar Heels program.
Yeah, so I think with COVID, it just really gave me the opportunity to look into what I wanted in a college, and I got to watch a lot of the games in the NCAA tournament last year, and just watching those and just thinking through the process of what I wanted to do for the next 3 years, because COVID gave me 3 more years of eligibility. I just saw a great opportunity, and UNC seemed like a good fit for me for the next 3 years. So that was kind of my process. And I've really enjoyed it so far. The team's been super open and accepting, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, you got a chance, obviously, to go through some of the whatever that UNC does on a yearly basis in fall ball. What kind of vibe? What struck you about maybe the energy of the group?
Yeah, exactly. Just what you said. Their energy is awesome, and the chemistry the team has. It's really a group of people that all just is working so hard. I've never been around such supportive and hardworking people in my life, and I think that's really going to help me as I keep continuing on my lacrosse career and as I go through college, just to be around that group of girls with that intense energy they bring to practice every day and just want to get better from every time they step on the field.
The energy around this program probably has to be interesting considering how great they were last year, but the disappointing ending, having their only loss all season be in the Final Four. For somebody who wasn't part of that team, but now you join that group, what's that been like?
Yeah, I can definitely feel there's an energy that they kind of have something like a little chip on their shoulder, and they want to go out there every day, whether it's practice or a scrimmage or anything. They just take it really intensely because they know, I guess, about last year, and that was a little disappointing, but they definitely work hard every day to keep pushing towards that goal again.
And I guess finally, before we let you go, you, on top of being part of this USA women's national team on the senior side, have also been part of some of the Sixes trial runs, gearing up for the World Games coming up this summer. What are your impressions of Sixes?
Yeah, Sixes is definitely an awesome way to grow the game. It's really fast-paced, which kind of struck me at first because it's a lot of back and forth, but it's such a cool game to watch because it's in a smaller setting. So for people that don't know the game as well, they can really pick it up easily just by watching the smaller setting and the fast-paced scoring. And there's a lot of cool aspects to it that I really enjoyed playing. And I just got to build a lot of great friendships from doing the Sixes and also this team, which I think will last forever.
Yeah, that's really cool. You talk about growing the game and sort of what that meant to you. And then, we were talking about this with Jenny Levy in terms of the growth she wants to see and lacrosse and women's lacrosse as a whole, to be a part. What's it like to be a part of that? Because, Jenny Levy wants to sell out Towson, this upcoming summer. I'm sure you guys talk about that and what the impact you want to make. And now you're picking part in Sixes. For you, what's that mean to sort of hear those messages and be a part of that too?
Yeah, it's definitely something super special to be a part of. And just seeing like the crowd we got at the last women's national team scrimmage in Maryland against Canada and BC, just seeing all those little girls be so excited to see you is something that's just so special. And it's just such a surreal moment to think that I was one of them one day and then to see all of them in the crowd. And at the Sixes event, it was funny. Some girls would run up to me and be like, "Hey, can we make a TikTok?" or something like that. And I could just tell that they were just so excited to see you, which is awesome. And I think that's really going to grow the game, just having these events and keep pushing players to chase their dreams.
Did you make the TikTok?
Yeah, what's your TikTok game like?
Did you do it?
Yes, we did make the TikTok. Yeah, it was me and a few other girls. It was funny, very funny.
It's all about the brand, right?
Yeah.
Getting it out there.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I know we're actually from a very similar area. I grew up in Wayne as well. Are you an Eagles fan?
Oh, yes. I'm
Okay,
a big
good.
Eagles fan.
Nice.
Love the Eagles. Go Birds.
Yeah, see,
Sorry,
perfect.
guys.
All right, now I'm just had to make sure.
To be one of those.
Hey, gonna close the season strong, right?
Yes, they got to close it out. Yeah.
Jalen Hurts.
They're going to do it. I can feel it.
Well, that's enough of that. Olivia, we appreciate you so much coming on. Thank you. Have fun this weekend, okay?
Thank you so much. It's been awesome to talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
See ya. Bye.
Olivia Dirks from UNC and the USA women's national team. Now, Tom, that's all the time we got here on this show.
All right. Well, we thank Olivia. Say bye to everybody. Olivia, thanks her for coming on. We thank you for coming on as well. For Travis, the rest of us, we'll see you next time, everyone.
Yeah.